Well, October, the creepiest month of the year, is finally here. This is the time, not of good tidings, that comes later, but of horror and despair. And what a fine coincidence that it is that my favorite horror manga, Uzumaki, has been adapted into an anime and finally been released. After 5 long years, it's finally here. And I'm not kidding, the teaser trailer was released on August 30th, 2019 and was set for a 2020 release, but obviously because of COVID it was delayed multiple times. And honestly, for the longest time, it seemed like Half-Life 3 had a better chance of releasing first. But the wait has been worth it, and today I want to discuss this wonderful series with you. Before we get into the show, let me give you the basic groundwork. Uzumaki is a Japanese horror manga series written and drawn by Junji Ito and was first published starting in 1998 till 1999, the year before most of you were probably born. The series follows 2 main characters, Kiri and her boyfriend Suichi, who unravel a strange spiral phenomenon occurring in their small town of Kuzurocho. In the beginning, the spirals are benign. Grass begins to bend into spiral shapes, the water swirls, and strange dust devils haunt the town. But soon, the entire town begins to spiral out of control. See what I did there? Anyway, in this video series, I'm going to review and analyze every episode of the anime, starting with the first one. There's going to be a total of 4 episodes in this anime, released throughout the month, which means I'll be making 4 different videos. For each episode, I'm going to provide a synopsis, a comparison between the anime and the manga, and there are pretty big differences, and I'm going to give you my opinion at the end, so let's get started. The first episode begins with the main character Kiri walking back from school. We can already notice that the grass is bending into spirals, a dark lighthouse in the distance, and even spirals in the clouds above. You're probably thinking the lighthouse is creepy, but don't worry, we'll be seeing a lot more of that in the future. Also, the art style probably caught your attention. In this anime, they go to great lengths to capture the manga look. The art is black and white, and it's a combination of CGI and artists drawing over motion captured footage. Overall, it creates a very stylish and unique look, and it fits very well with the horror aesthetic. Kiri then introduces us to her hometown of Kuzurocho and tells us that she's going to share the strange stories that have been happening here. And trust me, there are some really strange things going down on here. And then we cut to the intro. Kiri next goes to the train station and meets up with her boyfriend Suichi. Suichi goes to school in another town and therefore always travels in and out by train. He seems a little off and asks Kiri if she wants to run away with him. Suichi believes that there is something wrong with the town and begins to point out strange anomalies such as the whirlpools and the drainage and the increased occurrence of whirlwinds. Now, Suichi is certainly the most paranoid and schizoid character in the series, but you can't really blame him, because most of his crazy conspiracy theories usually end up being true. He's like the Alex Jones of this world, but with a slightly higher accuracy rating, and no obsession with gay frogs.
Hey people, I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay!
Suichi then mentions that his father has been acting strange and is now obsessed with spirals. He's drawing them everywhere and collecting objects in the shape of spirals. He even begins to create his own spirals by spinning his eyes independently of one another, by spinning his food and the water in his baths. Kiri laughs at the ridiculous story. At this point, the horn begins to suddenly blow, and Suichi states that everything in this town is driving him crazy. The lighthouse, the sky, the gloomy sea, and the mountains around them. Suichi continues to ramble and walks off while Kiri is hit by an increasingly common whirlwind. Afterward, arriving home, she sees her pa speaking with Suichi's father, who has come to their house because he wants Kiri's dad, a potter, to make him objects in the shape of spirals. Suichi's father reveals his love of spirals in an insane tone. He is truly obsessed, and Kiri is now starting to think that Suichi may have been telling the truth. Now, I would sometimes as a child spin my food or the water in the sink or bath as well, but I wasn't really obsessed with spirals or anything. I just thought it was fun. So maybe his dad isn't crazy. Maybe the dude just wants to revive his inner child. Can't anyone give a man a chance to let him explore himself? Next we see Kiri at school talking with her friend, Azami. They discuss Suichi, but soon the wind blows against Azami's hair and a scar in the shape of a crescent moon is revealed on her forehead. Azumi explains that she got the scar when she fell when she was a kid trying to impress a boy at the playground. She mentions that after this event, she did become closer with the boy that she was trying to impress and hasn't really had any trouble with guys since. She jokes that the scar might be the reason that the boys are so attracted to her. Of course, the scar will become far more attractive later on. They then walk together to the train station. On the way, all the boys can't keep their gaze away from Azami. They then run into Suichi and Kiri introduces him to her friend. Azami is happy to meet him, but the feeling is mutual. Suichi looks like he's seen a ghost. He sees a strange aura emitting from Azami and quickly grabs Kiri and runs off with her. She asks him what is wrong, and Suichi states that he could feel the presence of the spiral emitting from Azami. He tells Kiri to be careful because Azami is a spiral. Kiri doesn't believe him, but she also didn't believe him about his father. And well, forget it. I'm sure it's all gonna be fine. Anyhow, Kiri makes it home and is immediately called by her father. He tells her that he finished the piece that Suichi's father had requested and asks her to deliver it. She goes over to his house. She tries to give the piece to Suichi's father, but he says that he doesn't need it anymore because Suichi's father has now realized that you can manifest spirals on your own with your own body. He then proceeds to stick his tongue out. It's abnormally large and twists it into a large spiral. Kiri is naturally horrified and runs off. Maybe she won't doubt Suichi again. Immediately after, a man arrives at the house to deliver a large round tub. This will become a little bit more important later on. The scene cuts again to later that day. Suichi is confronted by Azami, who is perplexed at why he doesn't find her attractive. All the boys find her attractive after all. She doesn't handle rejection well, it seems. Suichi is once again repulsed by her. He can see the spiral aura coming from her. He even begins to see a spiral on her forehead. She pulls her hair to the side and now her crescent scar has turned into a spiral itself. And of course, while this is going on, we continue to see spirals in the water behind Suichi. I really do like the attention to detail. Suichi then tells her that her scar has turned into a spiral, but she doesn't believe him. No one ever does. Suichi begins to reveal his conspiracies to Azami about how she has now become infected by the spiral contamination that has taken a hold of this entire town. He tells her to get out of town quickly before things get worse. But Azami starts to cry. She can't run away, now when she's so obsessed with him. He then runs off, again. In the next scene, we cut to a funeral. Suichi's father is dead. His body has been cremated, and his ashes begin to fly into the air from the chimney. Suichi and Kiri go off to the side to talk. Suichi asks her if she wants to know how his father really died. Kiri mentions that he fell down the stairs, didn't he? But Suichi snaps back and says that's just the lie that they told everyone, the cover-up. Suichi's really starting to lose it now, randomly snapping at Kiri for no reason. I mean, she's just repeating the lie that you told her, dude. Like, come on, man, chill. He then begins to tell her the true story and mentions how his father's mental state was getting worse. Suichi and his mother had actually gone to the local hospital to look into admitting him there full time. But when they got home later that night, they couldn't find his father. The whole house was empty except for one room. It contained a giant circular tub that we had seen before. This is where we get one of the most iconic scenes in manga history. Suichi and his mother slowly approach the tub, open it only to see the twisted and mangled corpse of his father. He had managed to turn his own body into one large spiral, breaking every bone in the process, and of course, killing himself. This is definitely one of the weirdest things you see in this entire manga. Or, well, actually there might be one thing that's a little bit weirder, and we'll be seeing that soon. Immediately after the funeral, people start to notice something strange in the sky. The smoke from the cremation has formed a spiral of its own. The smoke then begins to flow into the dragonfly pond, but then a shape of Suichi's father's face can actually be seen in the sky, seen in the spiral above. Seeing this horrific display, Suichi's mother loses her mind and has to be admitted into the hospital in the place of her husband. Kind of ironic, isn't it? While Suichi rushes his mother to the hospital, Kiri stays behind. At this point, she's actually approached by Azami once again, who's actually coming to town on a taxi after hearing the news. A strong whirlwind blows past them, and Azami's hair is blown away to reveal something wrong. The spiral in her forehead is getting bigger, and now it's begun to dig into her skull. Kiri mentions this to her, and Azami runs off. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Suichi's mother is hysterical and frightened of anything shaped like a spiral. Suichi and the nurses desperately try to calm her down, but unfortunately, things only get worse and worse. The next scene cuts to a rainy day while Kiri is in school. Her class is interrupted when a boy arrives late, completely drenched from the rain. For some reason, he only likes to come to school on rainy days. Now we quickly learn that this boy has a lot of problems. He's slow, both physically and mentally, and is heavily bullied by his classmates. They strip him naked and drag him through the hallways. My goodness, and I thought Korean stories had the worst bullying. He turns over on the floor and reveals a large spiral on his back. His classmates are shocked and the scene cuts to black. It seems that Uzami and Suichi's father aren't the only ones that can express spirals with their own bodies. It seems that many other people in this town are being infected with the same type of contamination. Back in the hospital, we see Kiri visiting Suichi's mother, who has now shaved her head and also had her hands bandaged. Why? Well, because her hair sometimes forms spirals, and her fingerprints, well, they look like spirals as well, so she cut them all off. Pretty much whenever she sees a spiral, she loses her mind. Yeah, Suichi's now got a mom who's just as insane as her dad. I kinda don't blame him really for being all paranoid and weird anymore. Dude's had a rough life. Anyway, because of her extreme spiral phobia, all spirals have to be hidden. This is why Suichi now wears gloves to hide his fingerprints. Kiri makes her way home and runs into Azami again, who is wandering the streets alone at night. Kiri calls out to her and Azami turns around and gives her a diabolical look. Her right eye remains hidden in the darkness. Azami says that something feels off and that her right eye can't seem to focus. She wants Kiri to look at it. She lifts off her hat to show her eye, and at this point, we're about to see perhaps one of the most famous scenes in the entire manga, and honestly something that's probably creepier than Suichi's father in the tub. The spiral has completely engulfed her upper head. Her eyes begin to roll back and disappear. Absolutely disgusting, but also kind of awesome. Kiri, of course, is traumatized again. I mean, the girl just can't get a break. Next we see that the boy who was trying to oppress Azami, he lures Suichi to the local park. Azumi soon arrives and the boy tells her that he did what she asked, and whether she was now going to go on a date with him. She blows him off and tells him to scram. He becomes angry and pulls her hat off for some reason. Not sure what the plan was there, I guess to do this next awesome reveal. But once he does this, we now see her face is almost entirely a spiral. She then sucks the boy, not in the way you might think, get your mind out of the gutter, and disappears into nothing. I guess that scar really did make her attractive. He eventually arrives and Suichi warns her not to get any closer. He's hiding in the tree like a monkey. He tells her to look at the other direction to get a sight of Azami. When they look over to her, they see that she is now being sucked into her own spiral. Her body implodes upon itself until nothing is left. Kiri then does a little narration about how this was just the beginning and that things would get far worse, and then the episode ends. Well, that was episode 1. Overall, I liked it. The animation was superb, the voice acting was good, and the story was just as intriguing as I remember. But there are some significant differences between the anime and manga that I noticed. First, I should point out that the anime is only 4 episodes total, with each coming in at 22 minutes roughly. The manga, however, is 648 pages. At the end of the day, there's just no way that you could fit all these pages into 4 regular length episodes. Because of this fact, the biggest difference is that the pacing in the anime is much faster. Events that occur later in the series are pushed ahead, and a lot of scenes have actually been rearranged or cut entirely to move the story around more quickly. The first episode covers the first 3 chapters of the manga, and I'll be going through pretty much each chapter and pointing out the major differences that I noticed. In the beginning of chapter 1 in the manga, Kiri encounters a whirlwind immediately after being introduced, but in the anime it occurs later, after she meets Suichi. Also, in the manga, before she meets Suichi, she actually runs into his dad kneeling in some alley and staring at a snail with a spiral shell. This scene is entirely missing from the anime, and we don't really see the dad until Kiri goes home. Also, because of this, when she does meet Suichi in the manga, she is actually the one that brings up the fact that his dad has been acting a little bit strange, while in the anime, Suichi just brings it up himself. Also in the manga, they actually go together to a local playground, and this is where Suichi asks Kiri to leave town with him, but in the anime, it just happens immediately when they're walking down a street. Also in the manga, when Kiri encounters Suichi's father acting strange at her home, she meets up with Suichi for a second time afterward and brings it up with him. Here, he tells her the truth about his obsession with spirals and how he's been collecting spiral-shaped objects. While in the anime, this explanation is given right away after Kiri meets him at the train station. Also, this second encounter between Suichi and Kiri is where Suichi points out the whirlpools and the drains. Again, in the anime, it happens right in the first encounter right after the train station. Essentially, the 2 scenes between Suichi and Kiri for the manga have been combined into one for the anime. Later on in the manga, we have a scene where Suichi goes to his home with Kiri and sees his parents fighting. The fight begins because a mother got rid of his father's spiral collection in the hopes of ending his obsession, but it actually makes it worse. Because it is here that his father first mentions the possibility of expressing the spiral with his body. This scene is missing from the anime, and we don't see Suichi's mother until the funeral. Also, this scene in the manga is where the father spins his eyes for the first time. In the anime, the eye spinning actually happens in the first encounter between Suichi and Kiri, when Suichi just tells Kiri about it, and we see it in a flashback, but in the manga, they both see it together in the house. In the anime, Kiri meets Azami almost immediately within the first 6 minutes, but in the manga, she actually doesn't appear until the 3rd chapter, after Suichi's father is already dead and his mother is already in the hospital. Also in the manga, Azumi meets Suichi at his house when he is somewhat depressed due to the stress of his family falling apart and the spiral menace, but in the anime, she meets him at the train station, where Suichi appears pretty normal, or at least normal for him. When Azami confronts Suichi in the anime, she meets him in the street, but in the manga, she just goes to his house. In the anime, we see Azami arriving back in Kuzurocho when she hears about the funeral, but again in the manga, she actually doesn't appear in the story until long after this event. It is also in this scene that it's revealed that a spiral on her head has gotten very large. However, in the manga, the scene is a little bit different. Here, Azami isn't meeting Kiri because of the funeral. Instead, it actually happens because Kiri decides to confront her about visiting Suichi constantly and not leaving him alone. The meeting in the anime is far more amicable, but her forehead being exposed by the whirlwind is the same in both situations. Later, we have the scene where Kiri is at school on a rainy day and the slow kid shows up wet to school. He acts strangely and moves like a snail. However, in the manga, this actually doesn't occur until chapter 8, much later in the story. Also in the manga, Kiri's hair is much shorter at this point because of reasons that I won't spoil. Not exactly sure why they moved this up, but I guess they'll conclude the story in the next episode. Also, there are a bunch of scenes in chapter 2 as well that aren't included in this episode either, such as a scene where Suichi's mother realizes that there's a spiral in her ear, and of course, the very creepy hallucinations she has of centipedes trying to get into her head. Also, you have the scene where she sees her husband in the IV drip bag, and so much more that I won't spoil because it might happen in the next episode. So overall, these were pretty much all the major differences that I noticed. Most of them involved scenes being rearranged or deleted to fit this giant manga into 4 episodes. Again, I'm not exactly sure why we're only getting 4 episodes, especially given the fact that it's been under production for 5 years. I do hope that they don't rush things too much and hopefully have a second season, but I guess we'll see. There's also a lot of great moments that happen later on in the story, and it sucks that a lot of them might not appear in the anime. But despite all that, this is actually the best adaptation of Junji's work that I've seen, but it still sucks that it's not getting the full love that it deserves. I think it would have been better if the series had at least 10 to 12 episodes. The manga had 19 chapters overall, and I think it would have been a perfect fit, but I guess it is what it is. Overall, despite the breakneck pacing, I actually liked it. Like I said, the animation is unique and well done. I love that they're trying to keep the manga's original look. The voice acting is superb and I can't wait for the next 3 episodes. It's gonna be fun watching these throughout October as we get closer and closer to Halloween, and the episodes also get creepier and creepier. The characters are mostly interesting. Suchi and Kiri are a little one-dimensional, but they'll hopefully get a little bit more fleshed out in the coming episodes. Again, it is 4 episodes, so character development might be rushed or limited. Again, I really don't like this 4-episode run. Now, there were some other issues that I had besides the pacing. The animation is good for the most part, but there are some places where it looks a little wonky, and you can notice some messy CGI and motion capture, but these scenes are few and far between. Honestly, in conclusion, this is the perfect creepy series to watch during the Halloween season, and I highly recommend it. Again, I would also recommend that you read the manga to get the full story, which most likely won't be included in the series. I can kinda guess which stories it might leave out. There are of course filler stories in Uzumaki, but they aren't really all that important to the overall story, but they're still cool nonetheless. But again, I'm really hoping that they keep a lot of the more important scenes. But again, I won't exactly say what those scenes are because I don't want to spoil it. But regardless, as long as they keep the major bits in, I'm sure it's all going to be good. Thanks for watching this episode. If you like it, please like, subscribe, and comment below and let me know what you think. Thank you.